All right, we're going to now be explaining Warhammer 30K because um I want you to know that these people who have the trans movement and the endless rebels, so, and the fact that they've infiltrated all our basically we're talking about the left. They have infiltrated all our institutions. They have corrupted the Democrats. They've basically won, right? Even though it's not really a win because all the people aren't agreeing with them. So they haven't really won. So they make movies that flop endlessly. But the thing is that they've positioned themselves where they can do this, which is damaging the culture. Think about it. It's insane. They've damaged an entire culture that was by the way was healing from the Jim Crow stuff. Everything was becoming was getting behind us. Black people and white people never really talked about race during the time when I was a kid. No one ever brought it up in class. Obviously, in history class, they'll bring up slavery, though they wouldn't make it like a. Well, they did make it a focal point, which is really annoying because I was more interested in the Roman Republic and Alexander the Great and stuff like that. And it's maybe because I'm a guy, but I was more interested in that history than freaking all these black people enslaved these other black people and sold them to and then the Atlantic slave trade happened. Uh I mean, transatlantic slave trade. I don't care. I don't care. It's behind us. It doesn't. No one's a slave anymore. Well, I don't know about in the East, but in the West, no one's a slave anymore, and racism happens in very small pockets of areas in the West. It's so small that it's almost irrelevant. Obviously, it's something we do have to we have to talk about that little pockets of racism that do happen, but it's not happening everywhere the way that they're espousing that it is, right? And if it is, it's mostly manufactured, as has been exposed. So let's get into the Endless Rebel and Endless Crusade. So for Warhammer 30K, what was what did I want what point I was gonna make? I actually for because I went in a total tangent, I totally forgot the point that I was making. Oh yeah, I was going to explain the Horus Heresy. Okay, the Horus Heresy. I know what the Horus Heresy happened and how it happened because I listened to the book, but I want to just make sure. Oh yes, now I remember the question I wanted to ask. I didn't want to know about the Horus Heresy because I know about the Horus Heresy. I just wanted to know how many soldiers are in a Primarch's Legion, or how much soldiers does a Primarch command? How many soldiers? How many Space Marines does a Primarch command in a pre? It has to say pre-heresy legion because now they're in chapters that are only they're capped at 1,000 people. So pre-heresy. I'm spelling this all wrong. Oh no, I spelled Primarch right. I spelled heresy wrong. Command in a pre-heresy legion. Legion. I might have spelled legion wrong, but who cares? Okay, 90K to 120,000 space marines. Ultramarines led by Ro. They were the largest legion by far, boasting roughly 250,000 to 280,000 Marines. That's insane. And so each Primarch, uh, basically these guys were mobile military. And they each had legion captains. company captains actually, and each company would do their own thing, right, in their system, uh, which is why the chapters worked so well. By the way, when they got into chapters, let's I digress. So Horus and most of the Primarchs questioned why the Emperor left because the Emperor had to stop midway Crusade. Half the Crusade was finished. The Emperor was like, "I gotta go back home." The reason he did that was because he wanted to create this webway that all the humans could go into, so that they could basically dodge the Chaos Gods. But what ended up happening was because of certain events that he caused, by the way, there was a certain Primarch who he didn't know uh, was already poisoned by the Chaos Gods, was slowly but surely poisoning all the other legions. Um, or at least they were poisoning a lot of legions because they started making these brotherhood lodges. Um, and so one of these legions, they're called the Word Bearers, Lorgar's Legion. Lorgar is a Primarch. He's the Primarch of the Word Bearers. He was the most religious Primarch there due to the world he came from. And he sent a someone named Aramis to Horus's legion. Horus, by the way, is the guy who ends up becoming the commander in chief. They call him the Warmaster. After the Emperor left, he appointed him to become the Warmaster out of all his other brothers because he's good at political warfare and really also a good soldier. There's only the only other person that could beat him in probably a fair to fair battle was his brother. God, what the fuck was his name? I don't remember. He's the Primarch of the Blood Angels. Angels. Sanguinius. That's his name. Sanguinius. Yeah, yeah. See, I remembered before that even popped up. So, Sanguinius was known as the basically second choice if Horus didn't accept the role, because Sanguinius just had more he had more pull than Horus did, but him and Horus were really close, so it didn't even matter. But Horus got corrupted by the Chaos God's tricked that the Emperor thought himself a godhead, and that he was secretly going to become a god in and he's just making them all fight for him so that he can go back and become a god, which by the way wasn't his plan. But you see the problem here, right? He was able to be tricked into that through deceptive lies and deceptive evidence manipulation. Because obviously they had to show him proof that this was happening, right? So through deceptive evidence manipulation, uh, he was convinced that he had to kill the emperor, otherwise humanity would go down the wrong route. Uh, which yeah, and so not only that, but they were already. But by the way, this is already through a mounting frustration. Uh, this is through a mounting frustration in the fact that so now instead of the emperor dealing with all the logistics and getting to just kind of decide what's going to be allocated to each legion, because each legion will ask will petition, most likely petition to the emperor what they needed. By the way, this is not explained. We don't know how it happened. I'm just thinking about it through the imperial channels and how it logically would probably worked when the emperor was the head of was the war master for the entire crusade, right? because the people at Earth aren't going to question the Emperor, because they would just die, man. They would just die. So they probably never questioned any orders he gave. If he asked them for that he needed these materials, they gave them that materials. And in Terra, which is Earth, basically, there's this council of old noble fogies, basically, called the Council of Terra, and they're the ones who did all the logistics, or at least they were the pencil pushers who had the purse. Now they never used this against the Emperor, because they would just die, because the Emperor was is eternal, and the Emperor's law is the law. Basically, his word is the law, and his truth is the imperial truth, basically. But they didn't also have the same reverence or fear towards the Primarchs, which are his sons, by the way. Basically, all these guys are princes, except they're not princes in the same sense. They're all basically like prince generals, right? Because they're more generals than they are princes, or at least they're considered that way. And so they gave them a hard time. Once the Emperor left the battlefield, they started giving all the legions a hard time because they're bureaucrats. And this is frustrating to people who are military commanders, right? Because they're like, I need this thing so I can go do what they call compliance on these worlds, because these worlds are resisting, and we're going to need more of these supplies. And basically the bureaucrats are like, oh, well, it's going to take some time, but we don't really want to give you this stuff. By the way, this just didn't happen. This most likely didn't happen. By the way, we don't know, but I am perceiving that this is the case because of just the way Warhammer works, and how much well, basically, because in the past people try to go against the Emperor and they all just died. So I'm sure this was also the case if you went against the Emperor during this time. And so this is why I know I got to a big tangent explaining how the Horus Heresy happened. But basically, through these mounting frustrations, they didn't want the Crusade to end. Okay, these were all soldiers who didn't want the Crusade to end. The same thing with the Templars. By the way, the Knights Templars. They didn't want to end the Crusade, but the Pope ended the Crusade. He had to end it. But the Templars themselves, the Knights, they did not want to end the Crusade. The only reason the Crusade ended was because they were branded as heretics by I think it was Louis the Fourth or something, because he owed money to them. But yeah. Um. So this is part three of my tangent. But yeah. So that's the explanation. Story short. To make a story short, basically these guys, these rebels, want an endless crusade because they don't know what's going to happen to them if they don't continue the crusade. Because the worries of all the legions and the Primarchs was what they're going to do after there's peace. There is no place for them after peace, or at least they didn't think there was. By the way, there was. There was There were a lot of inclinations that each legion has a particular they have a particular specialty to them, and so they most likely would have just been they would have been turned into bureaucrats. But that would have probably been the worst thing that could have happened to them, or at least in their minds, right? And so they're just not happy about that, and so a lot of them also not happy because of the Emperor. It's really complicated, okay? The Emperor wasn't the best guy. He didn't treat them all the best, and so they're kind of frustrated with him. And then to make it worse, he preaches about the imperial truth, which is basically an an atheist philosophy, that there's only scientific truth and imperial truth and objectivity, imperial objectivity, and anything beyond that, anything spiritual, is bad, and it's just like space magic sorcery of heretics. Explaining all this is a lot because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. Uh, but yeah, they never want to end the crusade because they don't know what's going to happen to them. Just like how the Primarchs were in Warhammer, pre 40k. By the way, this is pre 40k, so this is technically Warhammer 30k. During the 30k, which is when, before, during the Horus Heresy, that's when 30k is, and each of them, through the by the way, you learn this through the lens of Horus, because and the lens of Lorgar, and the lens of a couple other Primarchs, that they're not really happy with the Council of Terra because they're just bureaucrats sitting in behind, and they don't know what's happening in the front lines. And not only that, they don't want to end the crusade, or never want to end the crusade. They want to continue the crusade forever. And these people want to continue the crusade forever as well. And yeah, let's end it here. We're gonna continue the video with Leaf, the next part. I'm sorry, I'm so talkative today. I'm getting in all these tangents. Oof. I'm a Warhammer aficionado, by the way. I really like Warhammer. I just got into it a couple months ago, actually, so I'm not technically an aficionado since I didn't start with it, but I'm into the Ciaphas Cain stuff now. God, he's a great guy. Even though he's a coward, but coward made hero. Who needs to continue to be a hero so that no one finds out about his cowardness is kind of great. Well, all right, let me end here. I hope you liked the video. I know it's a little long, 17 minutes, but it should be all right. You have a good one. I'll be back for part 4. This is part 4. Well, I'll figure that out later. Have a good one. Peace.